1923 revisits Zane Davis' harrowing story after brutal attack on family. The highly anticipated Yellowstone prequel, 1923, has graced screens with its second episode on the Paramount Network and Paramount Plus, featuring a familiar face from the first season. Harrison Ford's character, Jacob Dutton, found himself discussing the fate of Zane Davis, portrayed by Brian Girardi, with the judge during his town visit, as Zane lay in hospital with severe injuries and his family dealt with the repercussions of their arrest. Determined to lend a helping hand, Jacob offers to assume responsibility for Zane's family, easing the burden on the state. Zane has earned a reputation as the Rip Wheeler of 1923, serving the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch faithfully as foreman and sharing life with his wife Alice Chow, played by Joy Osmanski. Together they raised two children, Matthew and Madeline. The shocking twist revealed at the end of the first season put an agonizing spotlight on the struggles faced due to their interracial marriage, with Zane fiercely defending Alice against Montana's anti-miscegenation law that led to her arrest. As the actor bared his thoughts to Woman's World, he reflected on how this powerful narrative resonates deeply with his personal experience, saying, "It's a meaningful storyline for me because it's actually personal in my own life. I had the privilege to learn about that and what it would have been like or what it's like today. And I think it mirrors in ways what we're going through as a nation and what we'll always go through, which is segregation and racism." After his arrest, Zane was carted off to Bozeman, Montana, to await his trial, leaving fans biting their nails over what's next for him. The actor delved deeper, saying, "Will he be able to do his job, which is work for the Duttons? And if not, what does that mean for him? If he can't have this job anymore, who is he and where is he?" Eager viewers have been flocking to Reddit to speculate on Zane's future, with user _concentrate_9000 reckoning it's a toss-up whether he survives, commenting, "One of my favorite characters in 1923. In true TS fashion, he's the guy you like that then gets killed." They added, "If Zane and his wife are both dead, then I can certainly see the Duttons taking their children under their wing." But there's a sigh of relief as the latest installment confirms the couple didn't perish behind bars, and despite a treacherous trek back home, Zane and Alice were back in each other's arms. The Montana sky stretched wide and unyielding, streaked with the fading hues of twilight. Zane Davis sat astride his horse, surveying the land that had become his battleground. The echoes of gunfire, the cries of his family, and the scent of blood still haunted him. It had been weeks since the attack, but time had not dulled the pain. If anything, it had sharpened his resolve. He had come back from the brink of death before. The ambush that had nearly cost him his life had only made him stronger, harder. But the scars on his body were nothing compared to the ones on his soul. He had lost his father, his mother, and his younger brother that night. The assailants had come like ghosts, swift and merciless. Zane had been left for dead, but he had refused to go quietly into the earth. Now the world of 1923 had shifted once more, and his name was on everyone's lips again. The tragedy of the Davis family was whispered in saloons, in church pews, and around campfires. But Zane had no use for whispered condolences. He wanted justice. He wanted revenge. The Duttons, longtime allies of his family, had opened their doors to him in the wake of the massacre. Cara Dutton had nursed him through his injuries, her hands steady, even as her eyes brimmed with sorrow for what he had endured. Jacob Dutton had placed a rifle in his hands the moment he was strong enough to stand. "Don't let the past break you, son," Jacob had said, his weathered face unreadable. "Let it make you." Zane took those words to heart. He had been made anew by fire and fury, and now he rode with purpose. The men responsible for the slaughter of his family were still out there, and he intended to find them. His search had taken him deep into the territory of outlaws and rustlers, men who thrived on the lawlessness of the land. Through back-alley whispers, he had learned the names of those who had ordered the attack: Corbin Hayes and his gang, a group of former soldiers turned mercenaries. They were ruthless, preying on ranchers, bleeding them dry before vanishing into the night. Tonight, that ended. Zane guided his horse down into a valley where a small cabin sat, its windows glowing faintly. He dismounted, his boots hitting the earth with quiet determination. The Winchester rifle slung across his back was the same one his father had taught him to shoot with. It felt heavier now, burdened with the weight of justice. He approached the cabin, moving like a shadow. He could hear laughter inside, the clinking of glasses. These men celebrated while his family lay in the cold ground. His jaw tightened as rage burned through him. Kicking the door open, he leveled his rifle. The laughter died in an instant. Corbin Hayes sat at the head of the table, his eyes narrowing. He was older than Zane had expected, with graying hair and the rough look of a man who had lived too long on the wrong side of the law. His hand hovered near his pistol, but Zane was faster. "Don't," Zane warned, his voice steady. The other men at the table, 4 in total, reached for their weapons. Zane fired. 1 shot, then another. 2 men fell before they even had a chance to stand. The third lunged for him, but Zane swung his rifle like a club, knocking the man back. He aimed and fired again. The 4th man collapsed, clutching his chest. That left Corbin. Zane took a slow step forward, his rifle trained on the man who had orchestrated the destruction of his family. "You don't want to do this, boy," Corbin said, his voice smooth, practiced. "Revenge don't bring the dead back." Zane's hands didn't waver. "No, but it'll make damn sure you don't send anyone else to the grave." Corbin smirked. "You ain't a killer." Zane pulled the trigger. The silence that followed was deafening. The acrid scent of gunpowder filled the air. Corbin slumped forward, a lifeless heap at the table. The ghosts of Zane's past still lingered, but they no longer cried out for justice. That had been served. He stepped out into the night, the wind cool against his face. The land stretched before him, the same as it always had been, as it always would be. But for the first time in a long while, Zane Davis felt free. The past had tried to break him. Instead, it had made him. The Montana sky stretched wide and unbroken, painted in fiery hues as the sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the Bitterroot Range. A lone rider pushed his horse harder than was wise, his face shadowed beneath the brim of his hat, his eyes dark with purpose. Zane Davis had returned to the land that had once been his salvation, and his curse. A year had passed since the attack that had left his family in ruins. He'd fought to rebuild, to push the ghosts of that night into the recesses of his mind. But memories had a way of clawing back, especially when blood had been spilled on sacred ground. The Duttons had taken him in once, offered him shelter and a name, but vengeance was a fire that no amount of kindness could smother. It burned in his gut, twisting his soul, urging him to finish what had been started. Zane dismounted at the ridge overlooking the valley, the Dutton homestead a distant speck in the waning light. He didn't need to be closer to know that they were still fighting, still struggling against the forces that sought to break them. The same forces that had shattered his own world. His fists clenched, the scars along his knuckles tight with the memory of battle. The attack had come like a phantom in the night. He could still hear the screams of his wife, the startled cries of his children. He had fought like a madman, like a man with nothing to lose. And still, it hadn't been enough. His family had been torn from him, their lives snuffed out by men who saw them as obstacles, mere collateral in a war of land and power. The men responsible had scattered like rats, and Zane had spent every waking moment since tracking them down, one by one. He had left a trail of bodies in his wake, each kill bringing him closer to justice, or at least something like it. The Duttons had urged him to let it go, to heal, but how could he when their blood still stained his hands? When the final name on his list still breathed free air? Zane had crossed half the country hunting the last man, and his trail had led him back to Montana, back home.